Service Lab is a community of service design doers and the service design curious. We meet up every few months to share our learnings with each other. Welcome everyone this evening. Thanks so much for joining us today. Just for anyone that is new to the Service Lab space, welcome. Service Lab is a bi-monthly event for service designers and the service design curious. We bring together various disciplines and share learnings, case studies, and practical tools. We've had events in the past about policy design, behavioural design, healthcare design, inclusive design, and many, many more. This is a very informal event. So camera on, off, whatever you prefer. We really welcome kind of everyone, no matter what kind of situation you're in, whether you're eating, cleaning, still doing work, out for a walk, whether you've got a little one with you or a really curious cat, everyone's very welcome. We always try to make these events as inclusive and accessible as possible. So if there's anything that we can do to make this a better and more enjoyable experience for everyone, please reach out and let us know. So I'll do a quick intro to the Service Lab team. So you've got myself, Charlie Pothecary. My preferred pronouns are she and her. I'm a service designer with a focus on designing inclusive services. I started a small design collective called Inclusively. It's mainly myself and a few other freelancers, and we work together to take on projects and freelance roles across public and social enterprises and a lot in healthcare. I am currently sat in a mainly white room. I've got a few plants around me. I'm wearing a navy blue top and I've got silver earrings and I've got long brown hair. I'm going to pass over to Oonagh, who's going to do a quick introduction as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Oonagh. I'm a service designer working in the public sector area, currently at FutureGov. I am at the moment in France, sitting in a room on a roof. So in my background, you can see wooden beams. I'm blondish with a fringe. I think I said she, her, but let's repeat it. I am wearing a beige shirt and very excited to hear all the talks tonight. Thank you for being here.
We also have Rupert. Rupert started this event series along with the wonderful Jenny, who I'm sure many of you know. Rupert still helps in the background, but isn't with us tonight. But we do have a very exciting announcement. We have a new Service Lab co-organiser, Katrina. So I'll hand over for Katrina to do a bit of an introduction.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me here. So I am a service designer at CIPD. It's a professional body for people professions. I graduated from service design at UAL this year, so I'm in the beginning of my exploration of service design, and I won Student Service Design Challenge last year. So my current work is focused on digital transformation, making services inclusive, and I improve membership experience, but I keep exploring the universe of service design and my place in this. My dream is to work in healthcare. So now I do like to read about healthcare news and many other things, do a bit of yoga, a bit of running and walking. So a bit of everything. So thank you for having me here. And I do hope you enjoyed today's event.
Thanks so much, Katrina. It's been fantastic to have you on board. Just a note to say that we are tweeting tonight. Please do help tweet and help share some of those tips and great advice that we're going to hear from our wonderful speakers. We are also recording. So if you are not comfortable with being recorded, please don't turn on your camera and please change your name to be anonymous. The reason why we like to record these events is we edit them together and then in a couple of weeks, they get released, and we've had quite a few views of them, and we think it's a way of helping to make sure that this event is even further accessible. Our last event is actually up online already, so if you're interested and you missed the last one, it's all about becoming and progressing as a service designer, so go and check it out. And now on to tonight's event. So tonight is all about multidisciplinary design. We were really keen to focus on an event in this area because we ran a quick retro at the end of last year, and this was one of the topics that the community said that they're really keen to hear more about. So we'd love to hear your thoughts afterwards. Please always reach out if you have any suggestions for speakers or topics. And I'm now going to pass you over to Otla, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the running order for tonight and our brilliant speakers.
Cool, thank you, Charlie. All right. Okay, the agenda for tonight. We will hear from three groups. We'll have 3 talks, all great and very excited, as I was saying, to hear from all of them. We will start with the team from MOJ. We will hear from Marida and Emily. Tassie, unfortunately, is unwell, so we will hear from the 2 of them. We will then move into SH24, so in the more healthcare area, hearing from Oonagh and Rapha about a project they're working on in Kenya. And then the 3rd group is from Policy Lab. So we have Vanessa and Ben talking about storytelling and design tools to kind of like tell the story of service design and design in general. So very exciting to hear from them as well. But without further ado, let's start with the first one. We will hear about creating an enabling environment to co-design a multidisciplinary team from the Ministry of Justice team, so MOJ, Marida, and Emily. And they will talk about, they will kind of like describe the approach and the tools that have been developed in setting up their new team on their project, and the way everyone continuously adapt and adjust their learning style to enable an inclusive working environment, and the impact on the team members' capacity to participate in the co-design process.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm Marida, and I'm a service designer at the Ministry of Justice. My pronouns are she and her. I have brown hair with this, fashionable blonde bits in front. Like, I don't know how to refer to them. I'm wearing a lilac shirt. I'm with Emily, that will introduce herself in a second, and our background is a bit plain. It's a X-board with sticky notes that are not there anymore. Nice to meet everyone.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Emily. I'm a senior policy officer at the Ministry of Justice with Marida, and I'm on secondment here from a charity called NACRO, where I work as a resettlement worker for men leaving prison who have mental health difficulties and complex resettlement needs. My pronouns are she and her, and my visual description, I've got brown hair, I'm wearing a baggy blue t-shirt, same background obviously as Marida.
So I'll start with our presentation. It's a reflection of how we worked together so far in this prison liver project that I will introduce in a second, to create an enabling environment for co-design. So this will be the structure of our presentation, an introduction of the project, some tips on, some reflection on how we created this enabling environment, and some learning to conclude. So to start on the project, this Prison Liver project is a cross-government project that aims to co-design, test and deliver solution to support people that leave custody, and especially to support their resettlement, improve their social inclusion, and ultimately reduce the offending. And project has been set up. Part of the project is 4 teams called Service Community that basically focus on some areas of challenges, such as the day of release, health and well-being, employability and skills, and community and relationship. Emily and myself are on the health and well-being service community. So the aim of the project reflects a bit of the intention of bridge policy making and user-centered design. So each team has been made from people coming from the digital worlds and professionals coming from a variety of expertise. So when we say digital worlds, we refer to user-centered design roles. So service designer, we have a user researcher, a delivery manager, and then we have policy role are people coming from public and third sector, like Emily coming from NACRO. They may be working in policy and operational roles, and they may have lived experience of custody. I can go on. Okay, so the role of user-centered design roles is the responsibility is to facilitate design process or the co-design process while navigating and enhancing the knowledge and the expertise that the policy roles bring to the table. And this seems easy, but it's not. So I will present how we try to tackle so far how we create, let's say, the condition for inclusive and accessible enabling environment for co-design. We have 3 ingredients, let's say. We divide in 3 ingredients in flexible mindset, accessible tools, and time and trust. So starting from the flexible mindset, I'm talking a bit from, let's say, a service design perspective. What we've been trying to do has been to keep a process error-friendly and promote a kind of yes and environment. So nothing is wrong, nothing is, we can help each other. And at the end of the day, I think that that's what agile means, iterating and exploring new opportunity through collaboration. Then we looked for shared values across our disciplines and encourage openness to learn from each other and facilitate and enable collaboration. I'll give one example that will be this one, look for shared values. So as part of the project, we host a kind of a trauma-informed panel. Now, trauma-informed care is let's say, I don't know if it's a discipline or a way of working that takes into account the individuality and the personal need of someone, very person-centered. So you may see on the side some principles. I may read a couple of them, like ensure that people are not put in trauma box, or acknowledge power differences, or enable collaboration, participation, and shared ownership. So we noticed, we were very happy to find out that this principle really well resonate with service design. While if we talk about accessible tools, what we try to do is challenge and avoid jargon and acronyms. We try to acknowledge that a very neat Miro board can be intimidating and inaccessible, and we encourage participation and hands-on, and trying to compromise and create alternative ways of working. And once again, I'll give an example. Some of the new team members, they were not necessarily used to the tools that we may normally use, like digital software like Miro, Trello, Slack. So there was already a kind of overwhelming situation of learning new way of working, new processes, and also new tools. So let's say that we try to keep as simple as possible. And, maybe you normally use some software to plan like Trello. We decided to keep everything on Miro because the team member were feeling comfortable with it. So it's just an example to show how we try to navigate different ways of working. And then finally, the most important, in order to create an enabling environment, we really must acknowledge the importance of time and trust. So it's not about only acknowledging time, but allowing time and create time to build relationship. And also, it's very important to recognize and value individual experience, promote reflection across team members and also self-awareness, and ensure transparency and visibility of the process. I think this has been very important for us to trust in each other. Once again, example. So in this case, I would like to talk about the fact that we moved away from the term lived experience to refer to someone. But we rather say, in our case, lived experience of custody, simply because we reflected on the fact that there are different levels of type of experience. We may have family member, friends, we may have lived experience in different ways. And referring also to someone as individual with lived experience without specifying what kind of experience may not reflect accurately on their contribution to the process as stakeholder. And now I will give the word to Emily to have some reflection on these 3 areas.
Thank you. Will you do that?
I'll do that, yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. So the first reflections are just about creating a flexible mindset. So some of my reflections were, one of the first ones was that my colleagues don't necessarily need to have an in-depth knowledge of the specific subject area that we're working on, which was a really good learning for me, because I think I had previously thought it would be essential that everyone involved in the project really understood the criminal justice system and the needs of our clients. So kind of going on from that, I reflected on the fact that service design is really quite aligned with the values of support work, because frontline support work, you're always working in a person-centered way, and all the work you do is about the person that you're supporting. And Tassie, our colleague who unfortunately isn't here today, some of her reflections were that she stopped relying so much on her personal knowledge and experience, and was able to kind of sit back a bit and listen and understand different perspectives from other team members by working in this slightly different environment. And that she also gained a new understanding of the feasibility and like the complexity of a collaborative design process, and adapting to new methodologies. So working in an agile way, which was kind of new and unfamiliar, but trusting in that process to be beneficial. Some of our reflections on sharing accessible tools. So mine, I mean, when I first joined the project, I didn't have a full understanding, to be honest, of what digital itself meant and what those services and processes were. So I reflected a lot on what that meant. I didn't know about the role of service designer specifically before working on this project. And as well as that, it made me reflect on my sort of perceptions about digital, and in my frontline work, quite often we're required to assist people with these digital processes. So I thought a lot about my understanding of that kind of world, and how I could reflect on that and use the learning here to apply that to frontline work with people who are struggling to access and maybe trust in digital services. All of the new tools, like Marida mentioned, like Slack, Trello, Miro, at the beginning was very overwhelming. But I felt, and I think all of us felt, really supported to use them in the team, and then could really see how beneficial they were and start using them properly. Sorry, it's okay. So Tassie has said, again, she felt supported and was given the space and skills to use these new tools, and allowed to navigate them in a way she was comfortable with, until she felt that she truly understood how to use them and felt confident to demonstrate her potential with them. And she also mentioned being given the possibility to contribute and participate in the design and delivery of activities. Reflections on giving time and trust. So I reflected on kind of the mutual respect of our different professions and experience. So like we kind of mentioned, that the alignment between support work and frontline work and service design, and that felt like a mutual respect within the team. And the service design process and role for me really helped me make sense of a lot of my knowledge in a logical way, because quite often there's a big overwhelming area to look at and try and address things and improve, and it just feels very complex. So I think that really made things make a lot more sense for me. And confidence building, being genuinely included in the process. So kind of being expected to facilitate workshops, and that everyone is kind of involved in everything that we're doing, was built my confidence in knowing that I was able to use my knowledge and experience to facilitate that. And Tassie mentioned maybe having a bit of a distrust in some of the systems and the support services available to people, and that distrust was able to be challenged by understanding kind of what goes on behind the scenes of designing a service, which myself as well weren't kind of aware of all those steps and everything that goes into that beforehand. So that was really useful. A big area that we looked at as well is acknowledging and challenging some of the language that's used in institutions, and how the impact that can have on people using the services. An example is the word offender, which is used in a lot of services in institutions. So as from that, we're co-designing a language workshop to look at and address these issues and acknowledge what is trauma-informed language, and make sure that we're being respectful of the people that we're designing services for, and that we're challenging stigma that's kind of attached to these services in that environment.
Thank you, Emily. I have like last 3 slides to wrap up with some quick learnings from all this experience of collaboration so far. So I would like to say that flexibility is key, and it's very nice that it's also one of the principles that user-centered design and trauma-informed practice share, because it does promote diversity, and without diversity, I think that there is no perspective. And then that sometimes I mean, user-centered designer, service designer, I'd say, we may not realize that we make things complicated, because maybe we may give guaranteed some things that we are used to work with. And also, we shouldn't expect people to feel comfortable disclosing the things they're struggling with. So I think we should be proactive and not let people disclose, oh, I really struggle using this tool, because it might be also a matter of emotional response and distress. And finally, creating the condition for a safe and friendly environment will allow us to build trust and enable full participation in the process. And that's it. Thank you very much. And I just want to add a final disclaimer. I don't know if you can add a disclaimer at the end. This is our experience. And because of flexibility is key, you may have a different one. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Share an amazing talk. Thank you, Marida and Emily. We have, please, virtual applause for you. And we have questions from our brilliant auditory. So, Emily, when you go back to your role in frontline work with the charity, what do you think you will do differently now as a result of working in this project?
Well, I do go back to my role at the moment. So I'm on secondment to the Ministry of Justice 4 days a week, and then I go back to NACRO 1 day a week. So I think being able to do those 2 roles means I probably do both differently than if I was doing them singularly, if that makes sense, because I'm really able to keep up-to-date knowledge on the criminal justice system, what's happening in prisons, what's happening for people who are leaving prison, and then bring it back to what we're doing here. And equally, I'm getting an insight at the Ministry of Justice about plans for service design, service delivery. So yeah, I mean, I think I would go, if I went back completely, I've got a new perspective, I think, on how a service might be designed, and what that could entail, and how much room there is for improvement, with not necessarily loads more resources, but just a better design process.
Could maybe both of you give any tips, learning points from the workshops for developing your new language? You mentioned that you created the new one.
If we have any tips, So we are basically, what we are doing. I mentioned that there are 4 service communities, right? So what we're doing is being basically a couple of 3 people from each service community are coming together, and what we are doing is, at this moment, what we've done, we planned the first section. So the tips are, I think this is a nice thing. We did a dry run among ourselves, and I think that was very successful. So very useful to flag the workshop, let's say not the potential, but the kind of opportunities linked to the potential activities. And to give you an example, the workshop itself is about, let's say, something like, have you ever heard words that may be, terms that may be questionable to refer to people that are in custody or have been in custody? And so, by designing the workshop, we had some ideas of some words, but by doing the dry run, a lot of things came out. And so from there, we decided that we have to divide in modules. So maybe words that are questionable in a situation or in a context, or words that are totally out of orders, or maybe, the most interesting was the situational, because, in some case, in some context, or from some individuals, you can accept some terminology, but they can become totally out of order in another context. So that was extremely useful. And another last thing is I would like to mention is trigger warnings. Before before working with people that in this specific case have experienced custody, I had a different perspective of triggers. And I think that that's a bit also related to the fact that we changed the lived experience as a role. Your role is lived experience, which is not. You are someone that has lived experience of something. So I think that triggers is another interesting thing. And sometimes maybe we give guaranteed of what is a trigger. Because probably we refer only to our unique experience.
Mm-hmm. And we have another question. So language is quite an abstract thing. So what was the outcome of the workshop?
Oh, no, we don't have a workshop, an outcome yet. We have the design of the workshop, and we will test it with extended team of prison liver program. So about 30, 40 people. And then according to how it goes, we are planning to eventually scale it. And so we'll find a way to keep you updated on that.
Yeah. Can the public join your co-design workshop?
Yeah, it seems there are also other people keen to hear more about the workshop. So it would be great to hear more about both the process and how you're getting there, as well as some of the outcomes and
maybe participate.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you. And from also the rest of the team that was part of actually co-designing the team itself and all of your learnings and insights. We are moving into the next talk, but please do feel free to drop more questions, and Marida and Emily will be here to answer them on the chat and follow them to hear more about what's next, what's coming up next. So moving on, we have Oonagh and Rapha one is a service designer from SH24, and Rapha is from a public health nurse. And they will talk about one of the projects they're working on, that is a self-injectable contraception, is the delivery of this self-injectable contraception on the Jojo platform. And without further ado, actually over to you directly.
Hi everyone, I'm Oonagh, a service designer based in London, and I work for SH24. I go by the pronoun she, her. I'm sitting in a flat with a friend in West London. I'm wearing a shirt with frills on the shoulders, and I have brown blonde hair with a fringe.
Hi everyone, I'm Rapha, a sexual and reproductive health nurse working at SH24. Brown skin, wearing a brown top, and black leather.
So we have been working on the delivery of a new online contraception service in Kenya called Jojo. And today we want to talk to you about Jojo and SH24, and then discuss a recent example of how design and clinical evidence has come together on the platform when we prototyped a clinical pathway for the delivery of a self-injectable contraception called Cyanopress. So some background on the project for those of you who don't know SH24, it is a digital sexual health service working in partnership with the NHS to deliver online sexual and reproductive services across the UK and beyond. As a not-for-profit, SH24 has an appetite for social good, innovation and sustainable growth. And since 2013, SH24 have doubled access to sexual health services. Jojo was born out of a collaboration between SH24 and an organisation called SIF, who are a philanthropic organisation focusing on improving children's lives. With one area of focus on adolescents, they want to ensure access to safe sexual health services and to change the way adolescents are treated, so they have a role in shaping the design and approach to sexual health services.
Apologies.
That's okay.
If you can share the screen so that,
I think Rapha might be having trouble. I'll continue on, Rapha. Once you come back in, you can take over. So Jojo is an online contraception service based in Nairobi, Kenya. We offer free advice and support via WhatsApp to users who have questions. mainly about contraception, but also about wider sexual health concerns. It operates from 11 to 7 every day with a team of trained sexual health clinicians answering the questions. The service has been running since February 2020. Jojo also offers the delivery of free products direct to users within Nairobi, and these include progesterone-only pills, emergency contraception, female condoms, pregnancy test kits, and HIV self-test kits. And this is just a little bit about how the service works. So people find out about Jojo by picking up one of our cards advertising the unique Jojo WhatsApp number. And these are handed out on the street by distributors who work on behalf of Jojo. And people also find out about us via digital marketing ad campaigns. And then once somebody finds out about the service and has a question, they simply send us a message on WhatsApp. The clinical team see the message coming in on their customer support ticket system. And this helps prioritize questions based on need. So the system allows us to collect and store key information about users, including age, name, location, gender. And then the clinician has a consultation with the user, answering their questions and providing advice and support. If in the course of that consultation they need a product, then they can start that order process. And if the user does go on to order a product, then the final stage is delivery, whereby we partner with local pharmacies and couriers to deliver the contraceptives and kits to the end user. Most recently, we want to develop a clinical pathway for the delivery of a self-injectable contraception on the Jojo platform. So this image is of Cyanopress. It's a progesterone-only contraceptive shot that is a self-injectable. It prevents pregnancy for 3 months. And Cyanopress represents a radical level of control for women, often when contraception can be difficult to obtain for a variety of reasons, potentially the distance required to travel to a clinic or simply the stigma associated with accessing sexual and reproductive services. It also solves another problem for some women who have controlling partners who are against birth control, so a discreet injection every 3 months is easier to conceal. Obtaining Cyanopress normally involves receiving some training on the self-injection in a clinic setting. So a clinician provides information, ensuring the user is eligible, and then shows them how to administer the injection. Then a person can get the doses to take home and administer themselves in the future. However, this first stage, which requires a clinician to show you in person how to use the Cyanopress, struck us as a potential barrier to adoption for some users. So the question for us at Jojo was, how could we deliver Cyanopress completely remotely in a clinically safe way? And this is an image just of the initial kind of mapping. So looking at the mirror board together with the clinical team and perspective from design and ops. So we looked at designing what the basic flow would look like. And that initial mapping, we were interested in what we would like to ask Jojo users from a clinical perspective. So getting the input from the clinical team, both from, what would make somebody clinically eligible for this contraceptive and anything specific to the Kenyan context also. So the clinical team did a whole piece of desk research to try and ascertain what the local guidance was in relation to Cyanopress. Plus we looked at SH24's process for delivery of Cyanopress too. So the practicalities of delivering that end-to-end service. And we thought about how we could deliver the clinical questions. So what types of questions would we need to ask, and what is the right amount of clinical information to deliver, and how this would be best done. And what we decided to do was ask some questions by text initially, and then followed by a video call to demo the injection. So following that mapping, we had 4 basic stages. So firstly, the initial stage is a WhatsApp chat with Jojo to share some introductory information about Cyanopress and to gather some basic details from the end user. If they're happy to proceed, then we would set up an initial video call. And on that video call, that first video call, we include a demo of the product. So showing the person, actually, this is what it looks like, this is the size, this is what you do, this is what the needle looks like, and also conduct a clinical eligibility questionnaire on that call, just to ensure that the person who wants this product is eligible for it. And provided the user wishes to proceed and they are eligible, we would then issue the prescription, send it to the pharmacy, and then organise for the delivery of the product to the user. The second video call happens once the user has received their product, and then they get the opportunity to do a test injection, feel how the mechanism works. And in theory, although this was only prototyping and testing, then they would be able to inject themselves after this process of support. Finally, we would factor in an immediate follow-up and reminder for the refill of the prescription if the user wished to continue with the self-injectable beyond that 3-month period. So in order to test the proposed pathway, so after we've done all this work with the clinical team, we know we have a process about how to gather all the information from the end user to ensure it's clinically eligible. I suppose the next part is how do we bring that all together and start to test it for real? So we recruited and gained consent from some test users in Nairobi. And at this stage, none of these users are actually going to inject themselves, but we've just mocked up the end-to-end process to gather their feedback, to check the length of the messages, to check the tone of voice, to check what level of comprehension in terms of the volume of information. Is it the right amount? Is it too much? Is it not enough? Is the way we're delivering it by text, by image, by voice, by video? How do people interact with that? So firstly, they interacted with the clinician on WhatsApp and were asked questions about Cyanopress and their eligibility. So I've got a picture here of just a phone and a WhatsApp chat. And so the user is receiving the information about Cyanopress. And then we also have an image of one of the test users who's on the video call with the clinician who's explaining the process. And then we have the picture of the second video call with the clinician explaining the product and the product in front of them. The last call aimed to replicate what would happen once the user actually receives their product. So as best we can to try and create as near as possible what that would look like in terms of what they would get and the script that the clinician would go through with the user. As this was our very first test, we prototyped even what the bag would contain. So this is very much test phase, but included 2 Cyanopress injections. So I think in the research and some of the feedback with that people who would never, most people have never actually pressed the injection before or not know what that would feel like. So we included 2 Cyanopress injections, so 1 to test and 1 which would be used then if the person wanted to proceed and inject themselves. So in this instance, just for the testing and the prototyping, no one is actually doing this, but we included a sponge for testing the injection so the person could feel what the action was like injecting the solution. And then also a makeshift sharps container for disposal of the needle. So that was another key stage of this process that was mapped. So if somebody is delivered a Cyanopress and SH24, for instance, they're also delivered a sharps box, a very small sharps box, which just ensures that the level of sharps injury is decreased. And lastly here, just some other pictures. So this is another one of our test users, and you can see her practicing the injection on the sponge. And I think what this does is it just makes people slightly more comfortable with doing it once, and then if they are interested in actually injecting themselves, at least they have a fairly good idea of what it's like. And also the key steps in that process in terms of the solution of the injection needs to be mixed. So in one of those pictures, she's basically shown us how she's mixing the solution, and that's one of the key steps. So following all of this work, we felt that we had a clinically safe and a user-centered pathway. So we've been doing this work over the last 6 to 8 weeks remotely. So unfortunately, Rapha's connection, it's a shame because we were going to do a double act tonight, but Rapha is based in Kenya. So we've done all of this work remotely across continents and with the extended clinical team as well that are in Kenya who fed into this process. So we are in the final stages of signing off the process from a legal perspective, with the aim to begin delivering to a small number of users in the next few months. So start small and continue to test. But ultimately we hope Jojo can offer the first completely remote Cyanopress pathway to users in the future. Thank you.
That's amazing how great job you've done being into different countries. So please ask your questions, and can you tell us maybe what was your main challenge for this project?
For me, I had spent quite a lot of time in Kenya with the team when the service was set up pre-COVID. So I suppose setting up remote user testing, like image capture of that user testing, relying on people who maybe have never done that before to do it, and that like doing a great job. But it's quite difficult not being there, but I think there are a lot of workarounds that you just come up with, and it works in the end.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you did it through Zoom, as I understand.
Yeah, so
how it works for remote testing in this case?
In other instances, I think if it was more formal, we would probably set up, have a specific space. But we had people in the community, so people from our local team who were doing some recording in situ, and then we were also recording from the screens that we were doing. So we had two perspectives on what was happening, and then also some photography of situations.
Great. Have you gotten any pushback from community leaders or anyone else uncomfortable with you sharing information about sexual health, and how have you dealt with that, especially being a remote team from outside the country?
Yeah, so
thanks for the question.
I think working with the majority of the Jojo team are Kenyan and are based in Kenya, and so when we set up, we started in two specific areas, and we ensured that the local leaders or the people from representatives from the Ministry of Health who had connection to those specific areas were informed about the pilots that we were running. So I think that's the first thing, and that was very much led by the team in Kenya in terms of the practices there. But we are restricted in some of the advice and support that we can offer via the platform. So from a legal perspective, there are certain things that we can't address, which is unfortunate, but I think we have to work within the legal framework. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. We have more questions in the chat. Please, if you can answer them, and we move on. Otla?
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Oonagh. It was great, and Rapha as well. If you're back with the connection, I want to drop any comments or anything that you didn't have the chance to share, please do feel free to do that. And yes, for more questions or answers, and it was interesting to hear the international angle to it, as well as kind of like clinicians and service design working together. And it's now time for our last talk. We have Vanessa and Ben. Okay, I was putting up the slides with your introduction, but let's go directly into your slide, Vanessa. What I just wanted to say is that we have Vanessa and Ben from Policy Lab. They're going to talk about storytelling through design and sharing a little bit about their tested design tools for storytelling in the world of policymaking, and they will also invite a discussion on what makes a good story for social change. Over to you, Vanessa.
Today, you've got myself, so I'm Vanessa Lefton. I don't know if you can see me anymore, but luckily, as almost like I knew, I've included a photo of myself. So I have what I like to call blonde hair. It's really brown in some ways. And the photo of me is on holiday. So not particularly professional, but looking happy. And I am an ethnography and policy lead in Policy Lab, and we're going to tell you what that means in a bit. And my pronouns are she and her. I'm going to hand over to Ben.
Hi, thanks Vanessa. Yes, hi, I'm Ben Peppiatt. My pronouns are he, him. And yeah, the photo you can see, it is actually the same room that I am currently in, which is kind of my office space. And I'm wearing a blue shirt there, but I'm wearing a surf green t-shirt, and my hair is grey, and it's not dyed. That's just the natural colour. And I'm a designer as part of the Policy Lab team.
Brilliant. All right, so what are we going to do today? So we're going to briefly explain to you who Policy Lab are. We're going to share some reflections on storytelling through the fact that our work is multidisciplinary, and we're going to explore some methods and some reflections about that, and then we'll obviously take questions at the end. So before we start, I just want to ask, has anyone heard of Policy Lab before? If you have, put a thumbs up in the chat. If not, that's absolutely fine. So let's just see, anyone heard of Policy Lab? Oh, we've got a few, okay, a few. It's now hard to tell whether the yeses refer to yes Policy Lab or yes slides, but it's still very positive. All right, so a couple of thumbs up. So Policy Lab, we are a multidisciplinary team. We sit in central government, and essentially our team is about 15 people, and we all come from very different disciplines and backgrounds. So we have designers, researchers, we have a resident artist, filmmakers, speculative designers, and physical makers. And together we think about kind of how to explore different methods to improve and redesign policy. And we do this in 3 ways. So we do projects, we do communication, so we do like sharing on our blog, talks like this, and we also do training across government. We've been going since 2014. We worked on over 150 projects now, and the slide shows a kind of circle meant to illustrate that while we kind of see ourselves on the edge, straddling policy making and also lots of different interdisciplinary work and new ideas that exist outside of government. So we were thinking about how best to kind of illustrate the multidisciplinary ways of working in our team. And we kind of settled on the fact that we use stories in a large part through our work. And I think that we really do this in 2 ways. So we use diverse and citizen-led evidence to show how things are. And we use imaginative tools and approaches to show what could be. But essentially at its core, it's all the scaffolding of stories and helping people to tell stories and be a part of a storytelling process. You'll see on the slide, so there's what we call the double diamond, and it's borrowed from the world of design. Many people, I'm sure, on this call are familiar with it. And essentially, this is the kind of scaffolding that runs through all of our project working and has sort of shaped how we think in a large part in Policy Lab. And essentially, it's a process of thinking about design through convergent and divergent thinking. So we start in a discovery phase, we open things up, we then converge through redefining the problem that we're exploring, open back up to think about developing and generating fresh ideas, and then refine back down to think about how we can test those ideas and hopefully settle on some kind of outcome that may well then go through that process all over again. And on this slide, we've just set out some of the very different tools and techniques, mindsets, disciplines that we use through that double diamond. And we're going to talk to you particularly about ethnography today. So just to caveat, because policymakers like ourselves love caveats. So this double diamond is linear, but obviously we are always going backwards and forwards, thinking about iteration and pulling in those different methods to kind of evolve and adapt the project working that we do. So I'm going to delve now into a bit more detail on visual ethnography as a method, and also just set out some reflections, I think, on how using ethnography in the pandemic has allowed us to become a bit more interdisciplinary. So starting again from the top, I'm sure again ethnography might well be familiar to people in this room, but to put it really simply, ethnography is a type of research in which researchers immerse themselves in people's daily lives. It's both a process, so something that we do, but also a product, something that we create. And in doing ethnography, we actively participate in a group, and we do lots of observation, and we try and understand insiders' perspective of the group. And in writing ethnography or visualizing that ethnography, we create an account of our reflections. So this is a picture that you'll see of a filmmaker on a project, coincidentally also for the Ministry of Justice, about people leaving prison. And we've included this photo because a lot of the ethnography that we do in Policy Lab is visual ethnography. And that means that we use the camera as both a kind of method for collecting insights, but also as a way to use film to show insights to policymakers. And we found that visual ethnography is a particularly powerful way of telling stories in policymaking because it enables policymakers to see and gain more understanding into who their policy users are, so what their worlds look like, and we can portray personalities and experiences and feelings that policymakers might not otherwise have seen. We've also found that video is understandable to everyone, so it kind of cuts across like language and statistics, and it's just a really powerful kind of way to connect people. And something that we're going to come on to in a bit more detail is that our short ethnographic films that we show to policymakers allow space for different interpretations of a narrative and of an argument. So we're not force-feeding people a way to think about a policy issue. We are showing people experiences and letting people kind of come to conclusions about what that means for their policy. So during the pandemic, we had to obviously shift our approach as to how we did visual ethnography. And really, on reflection, I think this has given us more opportunities to take a more interdisciplinary approach. So just wanted to share some sort of new reflections with you on that. We had, I think, the process of doing remote ethnography. So essentially, rather than going and a filmmaker spending a day with a person and observing them with their camera, we asked people to send us weekly videos via WhatsApp, and we asked for 5 videos a week. And each participant worked with a researcher in lab to decide what those videos looked like. And over the number of weeks, our tasks became increasingly bespoke and participant-led. And this meant that rather than spending one day with participants, we actually were able to spend a number of weeks getting to know participants and directing that research. So I think there were a number of things that this kind of lent to us. I think it enabled us to take a more participatory approach. So it gave kind of a bit more power to participants, which is something that we've been thinking about as a team for a while. So rather than the filmmaker and the participant spending a day together, over a number of weeks, a stronger relationship formed. And the participant was able to say, well, you haven't asked me about this aspect of my life, or you need to share more about this. I think also we had more opportunities to try out different interventions and probes. So we did some quite exciting, we thought it was exciting work to using speculative visioning, where we asked participants to imagine themselves in the future, and we basically created a story and they could fill in the gaps. And that kind of was situated within our ethnography rather than separate to it. And that felt like a new opportunity that kind of presented itself through this more longitudinal, in inverted commas, method. So I'm now going to pass to Ben, who's going to tell us a bit about some of the kind of approaches that we use to think about how things could be. So yeah, Ben, over to you.
Great, thank you, Vanessa. So as well as kind of looking to design methods to move from observation to participation in our research, we're also looking to kind of design experiences that make our audiences more kind of active participants in the stories that we share. So we take this kind of very user-centered approach to problem defining. And we use a kind of deliberate openness to evidence sharing and context telling to allow people to kind of construct new stories. If we could jump to the next slide. Thank you, Vanessa. So we use these, we call them evidence discoveries as a tool to enable multiple people to kind of view and contribute ideas and evidence about an issue simultaneously. So an evidence discovery involves getting people involved in a project, everyone involved in a project to come together and bring data together, evidence and knowledge surrounding a policy issue. So this is to kind of review what we already know, to add additional evidence and identify gaps in our knowledge for further research. So an evidence discovery, it kind of sets a level playing field in terms of that evidence and can reveal kind of gaps in our knowledge. If we jump to the next slide, please. So this image kind of shows evidence discovery in action before COVID restrictions. So kind of much like an art exhibition, we present our research findings in a very visual way using infographics in a visual space. And sometimes like images and videos kind of help groups develop a kind of new shared narrative about a policy challenge and the possible solutions. So in the image, you can see a mixture of kind of illustrations and infographics representing different evidence and ideas, and I think personas. So we aim for kind of a non-hierarchical exploration that creates a different experience to conventional evidence sharing in kind of documents or presentations. If we jump to the next slide. So this example could show is kind of, we might say is a kind of example of best practice, and is from one of the heads of policy lab, Stephen Bennett, who also practices as an artist, and his recent exhibition, which Vanessa has actually been to see. So I'm going to let her just describe it quickly.
Yeah, so this was basically, I think you could call it an evidence discovery. It used art as a way to convey information about climate emergency. And essentially lots of different art and information was shown around a room, and you moved around the room and had to look and find different pieces of information. And Stephen curated the audience, so a small number of people went at one go. They moved around the room, had half an hour to themselves just to look at the evidence, and then came together as a group at the end, and we had a free kind of discussion about what we thought the evidence told us, and kind of constructed some kind of conclusions to what we thought these different pieces of evidence revealed.
Thanks, Vanessa. If we could jump to the next slide. Why we think this is kind of really powerful, as I think Vanessa described there, is evidence discoveries can disrupt kind of traditional patterns of thought and help us kind of make new connections between kind of different forms of data, be it new or kind of existing data, or kind of new insights that we've uncovered. If we jump to the next slide, thank you. So obviously COVID restrictions have required a kind of adaptation of this method for a virtual delivery. So this is an image of a Trello board, which is, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. It's just an online platform where users can add and kind of react to kind of visual cards. So this just helps us understand and kind of explore evidence with a remote group, and you can maybe see how some people have been kind of reacting to the evidence with thumbs up and smiley faces or comments. So I've only worked for Policy Lab in this kind of remote working environment, but I was reflecting with Vanessa that kind of as we return to in-person connections and physical environments, that there is a greater opportunity for new connections to be formed when kind of looking at evidence. That kind of being in a physical space, navigating crowds, disrupts that flow of engagement that can be kind of lost online. So with the example of kind of Stephen's artwork, when you can, different ways of navigating that information can be kind of got from the physical space. So yeah, so what can evidence discoveries teach us about storytelling? We can challenge the hierarchy of stories. That information has emotional resonance, and embodied experiences still kind of retain power. So yeah, as we kind of discussed a bit, we really look to tell these stories across a kind of range of media and formats to kind of further nurture that open space for new ways of thinking about a problem space. We look at kind of combining qualitative and quantitative data to tell powerful stories. So there can be kind of an obsession with big data in government, and while quantitative data kind of presents big patterns, qualitative data can give that kind of depth and richness of information. So some of those kind of insights that Vanessa was talking about from our kind of ethnographic practices. So we really look to kind of design the kind of viewing experience of our kind of data and evidence. So creating kind of film showings and slide decks that kind of mix together these different methods and forms of data. If we jump to the next slide. So yeah, as Vanessa kind of, I think she described really well earlier, the kind of the power of kind of ethnographic films and visual reports and kind of bringing these authentic insights and inviting empathy. But we also look to, if we jump to the next slide, please, Vanessa. To keep our kind of policy making audience in mind. So we look to kind of couple that visual ethnography with presenting people's experiences kind of as data, almost like infographics, to allow us to kind of position these kind of insights that invite empathy alongside kind of social structures, policies and services. So the slide that you can see here was a journey map of a participant in our research leaving prison just 2 weeks before the national lockdown, and the kind of the journey he went on, and through the physical spaces, but also the support networks that surrounded him and his kind of emotional experiences and well-being throughout that process. So these kind of visualizations really have the power to kind of move through space and time and external, internal experiences, and raise up the value of those kind of that ethnographic data, so that we can position things that traditionally maybe have been ignored by policymakers, like relationships, emotions, social support, as equally important as formal services and policies. So what can kind of communicating ethnographic insight teach us about storytelling is that visual material has unparalleled impact. There is power in ambiguous or subtle narratives, so kind of giving people space to kind of form and construct their own stories. Cutting up insights into themes can compartmentalize participants, and integrating lived experience into policy making and materialize aspects of life central government can often ignore. So we jump to the next slide. Thanks, Vanessa. So these are all kind of insights, small insights from a part of a kind of very wide multidisciplinary practice explored within lab that Vanessa kind of alluded to earlier. And we really believe in knowledge sharing to be kind of collaborative and generous with our practice. So yeah, as Vanessa's showing, we share our tools and techniques openly on our blog and the Open Policy Making Toolkit, and to kind of encourage this kind of system-wide transformation. And yeah, that's everything. So thank you for listening. And yeah, as Vanessa's posted there, you can see various kind of ways of contacting us or engaging with the work we do. So thank you.
A round of applause for Vanessa and Ben. Thank you so much. It's an amazing talk. So many methods that we use. So can you tell us, please, how do you brief the users for this research so they record the right moments?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting question that has different answers depending on whether we're doing that in-person method or the remote method. I think for the remote methodology, there's definitely a chance to evolve based on the relationship that develops over a number of weeks with participants. And we would start with an in-depth interview and then have this number of weeks where they're sending videos. And I think one kind of example was I had a participant during the pandemic, and the project was about better understanding experiences of the pandemic. And about halfway through the kind of video sending process, the participant said to me, like, I can keep sending you these films, but I'm slightly acting here because the questions you're asking, they're just not like, why do you want to see, why? I don't really get why this is important. You're not really hitting the things that actually are going on in my life. And it was I think we got to that point because of this slow building of that relationship. And I was able to say, I'm so glad you said that. you tell me what's important, and you should share with me the videos that you want the stories to be told. So I think I've felt that with this remote, longer approach, there's really opportunities to be more participant-led about the right moments. But I guess we also have to ask what the right moments are, because we're working in a policy space where we have to balance being holistic and participant-led with answering questions with specific challenges on specific policy design. So I think it's about trying to be really clear where the parameters of our research are with participants, and potentially being quite transparent about that, so that people understand the kind of what we need to understand, but then can tell us what's relevant from their perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for explaining what are the right moments as well.
I think we are pretty much out of time for questions. I know there's some great looking questions in the chat. So if you're able to quickly answer them or follow up, that would be great, but aware on timings. So just want to kind of wrap up and just say a really big thank you. Thank you so much to our amazing speakers for all of their time and real generosity in kind of sharing their learnings and advice. Thanks also for everyone joining this evening. We hope you got a lot out of it. We always really like to kind of hear feedback, so do get in touch. And just a bit of a wrap up. So we heard from Marida and Emily from MOJ, who spoke about creating enabling environments to co-design in multidisciplinary teams. They talked to us about these 3 main ingredients that they're working with: flexible mindsets, inclusive tools, and time and trust. Thanks again, that was brilliant. We also heard from Oonagh, and we didn't hear as much as we wanted to from Rapha, but hopefully we will again in the future. Thanks again for joining us from SH24. Your talk that you did around kind of clinical pathways, co-design within the service of Jojo, and sharing those learnings around prototyping healthcare services between service designers and clinicians was fascinating. Thanks again for joining. And finally, but by no means least at all, Vanessa and Ben, thank you so much for joining us from Policy Lab. It was a fantastic talk about storytelling through kind of service design, that real power of visual ethnography, how it specifically really helps policy makers to kind of really understand what people's experiences are like, and bits around evidence discovery, and some really fantastic looking infographics in there as well. So as always, if you've got any suggestions for future speakers, please get in touch. Any topics you really want to hear about, please reach out as well. This event will be on YouTube over the next couple of weeks. We'll announce our next event in a few weeks' time. And other than that, thanks again from the Service Lab team. We hope you have a great evening. Bye.